Hey, everyone. Welcome to This Podcast Needs a Title. I'm Erica Davis.
And I'm Peter Malone Elliott. And this is Real Talk about writing, publishing, and everything in between. Our guest today is former Book Pipeline Unpublished finalist Samuel C. Spitale, author of the upcoming nonfiction book, How to Win the War on Truth, an illustrated guide to how mistruths are sold, why they stick, and how to reclaim reality. Set to be released October 25th by Quirk Books. But first, Erica. Erica.
Oh my God, what?
Dun. How are you doing?
Oh my God, you guys, it was just shaking. I am trash for long titles, so I'm really excited about today. But I am also trash with Quirk Books. Love you guys. My nephew is coming in to visit for his long weekend today. He's in college nearby. So we'll be kidnapping him pretty soon. And I can't wait. He's such a cool guy. We're taking a break from fostering dogs. It was really stressing out our little guy who kept getting chewed on by our most recent puppy, Chandler.
Oh, boy.
Finn, our puppy, wanted to keep playing, but he was also getting hurt and didn't know why it was hurting. What about you? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little fatigued. Yeah? I've had the pleasure of working with the winners and runners up of the 2022 unpublished contest. We just announced those winners and runners up. I'm in the midst of sending them out and all that good stuff. So it's, long hours at the salt mill, so to speak.
That's awesome.
But they're all wonderful. Otherwise, I'm fine. Still cranking along on the new book. I've decided on a title.
You did? Can you share it with us?
Swarm.
Like s'mores, but for being warm. Oh, swarm of bees.
There you go.
There it is. Oh, I hate bees. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a thriller with seeming like it's gonna have a little bit of horror in there too. So that's it's kind of bending that way.
Welcome to the dark side, my friend.
Thank you. Plugging away on that. Otherwise, I'm fine. I'm boring. Cool. All right.
Boring's amazing. It's okay to be boring.
Wow. I feel like my whole life's been a lie.
No.
I've always been told to be interesting and be,
doing cool things constantly is exhausting.
That's true.
I had a spring collection when I was a kid.
Like a fashion spring collection? You designed your own
metal rusty springs. I found them in the junkyard behind our house.
Oh, like literal springs.
Literal
springs. Spring, like the season. I see.
No, sir. I hate spring. It's just muddy when you're in Buffalo anyway. It's icy and muddy in the spring. It's horrible. It doesn't look anything like the JCPenney catalog app. That being said, it's okay to be boring, everybody.
All right.
I would love to hear a little bit about Mr. Samuel, who's joining us shortly.
Awesome. Let me tell you, he's a good chap. Samuel C. Spitale is a writer, storyteller, and screenwriter with a master's in mass communication. He has written for Huffington Post, as well as Geek Magazine and Advocate.com. Previously, he worked at Lucasfilm Limited in global product development, where he managed worldwide Star Wars and Indiana Jones collectibles. He is the author of Star Wars, Collecting a Galaxy, and How to Win the War on Truth, an illustrated guide to how mistruths are sold, why they stick, and how to reclaim reality. And I'm really, really excited to have him on.
I cannot wait.
Let's bring him in here. Samuel, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Samuel, let's just jump into it. So first off, congratulations on the release of your book. It's very, very exciting. You must be very proud.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to see it, finally hit shelves and exciting.
Yeah. So, can you give us a little bit of background on how you got in the writing and your creative journey and all that good jazz?
Sure. See, I began my professional career working for Lucasfilm Limited in product development, where I managed worldwide Star Wars and Indiana Jones collectibles. And on the side, I wrote for Star Wars Insider, doing quirky celebrity interviews and updates about the latest Star Wars product. I'd written a lot when I was younger, but never really considered a career in writing. But I guess about maybe 10 years ago, I began to discover the art of writing screenplays and began to do more of my own creative writing, and it felt like more of a calling. So in 2014, I left Lucasfilm to focus on my own projects, mostly film and TV scripts, but also personal essays, a manuscript of bad dates, which I turned into stories for Moth Story Slams and other stuff. Let's see, I began blogging for Huffington Post probably around 2015 and started my own blog and found myself writing more and more about real world issues like inequality and socioeconomics and misinformation. And so it kind of went from there.
Nice light stuff.
The lighter stuff that comes with age.
Valid. Valid.
For our listeners who don't know, Samuel was a finalist in the inaugural 2020 Book Pipeline Unpublished contest. And it's really been awesome to see that as the initial proposal that you submitted where the title was different. And now yes. I'm looking at the arc that you sent me on my bookshelf with the illustrations all in tow. And I'm really happy and proud for you. You know, I mean, it's such an accomplishment.
What was the original title when you submitted it to Pipeline?
I actually have a thing about titles in the notes because it went through. Oh, the original one, I think, and this is probably what that proposal was how to tell what's true in a post-truth society.
Yep.
Identifying fake news, alternative facts, and other forms of propaganda. And then, the title was something like, me and the publisher and the agent discussed a lot, and we kept going back and forth because we weren't quite, sure. Like we didn't end up going with post-truth because I think we thought that seemed a little too anchored in the Trump era.
Right.
And we wanted it to seem, like it was something that has been going on longer than that. And so another title I kept playing with was The Propaganda Playbook. Media manipulation from climate change to critical race theory, welfare queens to WMDs, and the war on Christmas to the war on drugs. And that's what I kind of kept feeling like was the most on point.
So on that point, I mean, obviously it's gone through many, many iterations, this proposal, right? I mean, it's so what the one that we saw at Book Pipeline is much different than what got published. So can you walk us through just a little bit of once you signed with Veronica, your agent, and how it changed from there?
Surprisingly, I don't feel like the proposal changed too drastically.
Oh, okay.
I think if you probably go back to the original book proposal and look at those two chapters and compare it to the final book, I feel like a lot of the copy would be the same, but the book is just way more expanded.
Sure.
And so I feel like the bare bones of those two chapters are fairly intact. I feel like the only real things to the proposal before we started taking it out was we changed the author bio.
Okay.
I feel like that got instead of more just like a resume, it became more of like my personal journey kind of with the subject matter. And we made the comp books less academic and more broad, or which are the most relevant today and what should we include. And so, and then I guess the proposal may have seemed a little specific and tight because it kind of came out. So how did I know that this was a full-on book idea? Well, I didn't at first. So
no kidding.
The genesis of the book came out of my frustrations with friends and family after the 2016 election.
Right.
Yeah.
So many people I knew believe stuff that simply wasn't true.
Right.
And it started driving me crazy. So I became obsessed with how do you penetrate those barriers of belief? How do you help people see the bigger picture, see how limited their views are, and often how many have been manufactured and sold to us like any other consumer good. That became my goal. And I kept playing with several ideas, like part crash course in media literacy, part psychology lesson, and part understanding, the forces of power who benefit by us believing all these lies and misinformation. And so ultimately I developed PowerPoint that was less a how-to and more of a how and why our friends and family believe so many things that are not true. I shared the PowerPoint with friends who also shared my frustrations. And I kept refining it. And now I had no idea what I was going to do with this material at this time, besides make my friends back home and family sit through it. But that was, so it became more of like, all right, what is the best way to organize all of these lessons, to build so that, to help people see that so much of what we take for granted isn't really accurate.
Right, right.
I thought if anything, it could maybe be a class or a workshop or seminar. And then I thought after I had finished it and then felt like I had a pretty good grasp on it, I thought actually maybe this could be turned into a book.
When I saw the cover for the book, it instantly told me, the illustration itself gave me a huge wormhole look into what the entire book was about, because I look at illustrations first. So I'm like, wow, looks like that guy's going to stab the other guy. But really, when you pan out and look, I love that it's an illustrated book. Can you give any insight into how much input you had on that?
Well, I kind of always envisioned it as having illustrations, the book. And I don't know if that's because, again, it started as PowerPoint, which is very visual. And I actually had it in the proposal as two options. The book could go in two ways. First is a graphic novel format, like Michael Goodwin's Economics. And it's fascinating. Like there's a whimsy to it. It's just a lot of fun. And so that book was the real inspiration. I just fell in love with that book when I first discovered it. Like I was like, oh, wow, this is something new that can be done that makes these otherwise dry concepts just very accessible and fun. And so that was my main inspiration. But then I thought, if that's too illustration heavy, it could also be more like a Randall Munroe book, like Thing Explainer, or even Robert Reich's Economics in Wonderland. And so I thought it can go in one of those two, depending on the publisher. And so I was pretty open about it. And so I knew that alone would require a lot of types of illustrations. And I wanted a lot of graphs and charts and tables.
Yeah, sure.
And the great thing about an illustrated book, if I have the chart, then that saves like a paragraph or two. So I knew that would be a heavy component of the book, especially as we go through the book towards the end. There's, more and more as we're dealing with real world data. As to how it would be illustrated, I thought we'd kind of leave that up to the publisher. And ultimately, they thought making it, a graphic novel was the way to go.
Nice.
I think my agent thought so too. And
nice.
It really enabled the material to reach the broadest possible audience, which was, I think part of the goal. Earlier is, breaking down these academic concepts and having a younger audience see it.
Doing it as like a straightforward, non-illustrated, nonfiction book, I think would have been a huge disservice to the material. And I think it would have gone over a lot of people's heads without it. So this is a really smart idea from you guys.
Well, and the illustrations, for me also help provide a much needed dose of humor.
Yeah, totally.
Which I really wanted. My natural voice is pretty satirical.
Yes. Yeah.
So I wanted it to come through in the art. Again, in much the same way economics managed to do. So as far as the artist, we went with Alan Wincup, who a mutual friend introduced me to. Thankfully. Nice. And he was like, I have a friend that's totally the style you're looking for. And, I wanted something modern, but with like a political op-ed sensibility. And and he was able to deliver it breakneck speed. Like,
cool.
Considering most of the people I feel like that, we reached out to in the beginning, like it would take like 2 years for them to do this much art. I'd say for like 90%, 95% of it, I had very specific, art direction instructions for kind of what I wanted. And then the rest of the time I was like, I don't know what to do for this panel.
Right. Leave it up to him.
So like, so a lot of it, I knew the charts and graphs and that. And then so coming up with funny stuff here and there, it just depends. Some of the jokes I had in my head a while. And
right. It was a pretty quick turnaround, right? Because I mean, you if I remember correctly, you sold the book in like, I want to say the first or second quarter of 2021, right? Right around.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was the first quarter, and I think we kind of got started in the second quarter.
Yeah.
And I think the goal was, because I had already finished the manuscript.
Right.
And I think that helped, but I think the goal mainly was to get it out before the midterm elections. The release date was going to be early in October, so that we would really have all of October. But again, it was, there's a lot of art and a lot of approvals, and so it got pushed a little. And then COVID, and just I think the supply chain stuff, things just took a little longer, but still not that much. I mean, we only lost like 3 weeks.
And this way,
great.
It's really fresh on people's minds. I mean, because it's what the week before the elections, right?
So that's which is a super quick turnaround.
I was gonna say, for our listeners that don't know, I mean, like that's fast. I mean, that's like never done, really.
No. So thanks to Alan, we were able to pull it off, and again, the manuscript was pretty finished. And in fact, I feel pretty lucky that there wasn't too many like huge changes. I hadn't read the manuscript. There was only like one chapter she thought needed to be tweaked or told through a different angle, kind of a thing. So that was the only major change. And then when Quirk read the full manuscript, I don't think there were no real major changes. The only thing we all agreed needed to change was the example I use when I introduce that critical thinking tool. And so it took us a while to figure that out. But I think I eventually did, and then I just submitted it with the chapter approvals, and that was it. But otherwise, the structure of the book, the organization, almost everything else was pretty much like it was in the manuscript. I just kept adding a lot more and adding a lot more material as we went along, as I would research more about. Yeah, that was probably the bit, that one, and then cutting material. Again, I have to hand it to Quirk. They gave me an extra inch. I think it was going to be like a 6x9 book, and then we expanded it to 7x9.
No kidding.
And we spec'd the book out at like 300 pages total, and it ended up being closer to 330. And they gave me, an extra spread at the end, and I just had to cut like 6 pages, I think.
Let's slow things down for couples and slow skaters only, and talk about that's from my deep dive into my roller skating days. Quirk books. Peter has a really great question here on our list of questions to ask you about Quirk, working with Quirk, but I am an advocate for how they reach their audience. They're the reason I love nonfiction. I remember discovering Sam Magg's Geek Girl's Guide to the Galaxy and Eric Smith's Geek's Guide to Dating. I want to know, like, what was it like working with them?
Erica wants to know.
I want to know. Was there anything about the process that surprised you?
Well, like you said, they really do have a way of doing these fun, quirky books. Working with them, honestly, was a dream. And I really mean that. I feel like they were such good sports because I kept inserting material every time I would deliver something. They come back with changes. I would still keep inputting paragraphs and sentences like, oh, I just found this stat out. Or,
did they ever catch on? Did they comment?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of spoiled me because they just kept, it was like, okay. And then I just, I kept adding and adding, which I'm so thankful they let me, because it was, it added so much more every time I would read. I mean, I read a lot of books. I listen to more audiobooks than I read these days. Mm-hmm. But I consume a lot of material.
Right.
So every time I would read something, and if there was one little mention, I was like, oh, that could go, let me see where I could fit, So I was always plugging in stuff every step of the way, even when we were at layouts and I was still trying to add stuff. And I was like, oh, but I found this. And it's like, oh, we have to add it. Like, one thing I discovered, I have so many notes, like from books, that I even forget what's in the notes.
Yep.
This one, so as I listen to books and read books now, I bookmark any pertinent information that I feel like could be useful at some point. And then I have a document that I dump it all in. I had found this study, and I was like, oh, I've got to insert that. Oh, I have to include this because it's so relevant to everything we're talking about. And so stuff like that, I kept discovering, because again, there's so much information. And so, yeah, I know Quirk they were super great.
Was there ever a point where Samuel, like, we're sending this off to the printers, you have to
stop.
Yes. Very last, I think the final layout review, I still had like changes here because the first few chapters were approved like months and months before the end, and so that meant there was material there that I kept wanting to add that I never did. And so when we add this, and they were like, okay, no, we're gonna miss our dates. And I was like, okay, let me choose the
one more
things I think are the most important and where we have room, because I think the biggest problem is that if you have to mess with the layout, then you're setting yourself up for more problems. So if the layout can stay the same and we just, we've got the white space, tried to fill up as much white space as possible. They were like such a pleasant experience overall.
Awesome.
Shout out to Quirk. You've got some fans here.
Hey, going back to what you were saying, how many books you consume. I mean, so I'm assuming you mostly read nonfiction, or is it kind of a mixture of nonfiction and fiction?
Pretty much all nonfiction these days, which is weird because growing up, I only read fiction for years. I only read fiction. I'd probably say definitely until my 30s, all I read was fiction. And then, as I've gotten older and consumed so much nonfiction, I'm constantly I have 6 books right now. The great thing is for digital books, you can have, the extra pages. For published books, we had to, limit it because we only had so much space. But for the digital version, I believe the entire document of sources will be in that book, because there really was so many sources. There were tons. So
I really wish I could process audiobooks, because it seems like such a good way to get through a lot of books quickly. I have trouble digesting it. I don't know why.
I'm the opposite. I have a much easier time paying attention to a TV show with the closed captioning on, which is different than listening to an audiobook.
Right.
But I'm with Samuel, where if I can listen to it on high speed, I can pay attention to it.
Sure.
I process faster than I can hear, or speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
And it doesn't make any sense because I love podcasts and that's audio. And I'm a barrel of contradictions. What can I say?
Well, I think it also depends on the material in the book. So with so much of this nonfiction work, it's not material that's totally foreign to me. So I'm listening to the latest, book on Trump or whatever. And it's not like the entire book is new material, so I can listen to it quicker. But if it's a subject I know absolutely nothing about and I'm learning about something totally new, like I can't listen to it at a fast speed. I need but if it's something I'm familiar with already, I know the territory, then I can listen to it at more than double the speed. And if I am, out of my apartment, usually I have my earbuds in and I'm listening to something so it makes the gym more doable. It makes cardio more doable. I can walk to the grocery store, the post office or whatever, as long as I've got my audiobook on. It's.
Since I got COVID a few months ago, all I'm enjoying when I have time to watch TV is true crime documentaries. Really? I don't know what happened. And I think that's parallel with what I'm in the mood for when I'm either reading physically in print or listening to an audiobook. It's like COVID, this dreaded thing that was hanging over my head for a year and a half finally happens to me. It's like, oh, this is the worst thing that could probably happen to me. Wait, no, it's not. Let's see what's worse. And then watching all this stuff. And it's just, that's where my brain's tapped into. I haven't touched Friends in like 6 months, which is really weird for me. But I know, that was usually my comfort. But now.
It's interesting for me. All I watch is fiction if I'm like, I watch storytelling, like I can't watch unscripted. I actually hardly watch documentaries. I do when I need to, but I feel like when I'm watching something on TV, or streaming, like I need a story or I want to get absorbed in a story.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And it could be because I listen to so many nonfiction audiobooks. I feel like that's my
break.
Like that's where I go for learning new things.
Yeah.
But when it comes to watching something, I want to get carried away in a mystery or weird. But I don't know why that is. But.
Human brains are so weird.
You mentioned your screenwriting background. Is that something you're still kind of actively pursuing, or are you more focused on nonfiction writing now at this point?
I'm still. I've actually been working on turning some of the lessons of this book into a pilot. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm. Yeah. Actually, I was working on that yesterday. So I have a Gothic ghost story script that's being shopped with a producer at the moment.
Cool.
Oh my God! Congratulations!
Nice. Awesome.
Thank you. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Which is again kind of not my. Again, I feel like I usually focus on comedy, so the ghost story script is
a departure.
A departure, but
there's a good balance with spooky and scary and humor.
I don't want to give away what it's about, but it's kind of a science, like it's debunking ghost stories while at the same time being a ghost story.
Ooh. Cool.
Very cool. It's got a lot of science in it. And so, it's a concept that I don't feel like I've seen. And so,
cool.
Fingers crossed it'll see the light of day. You guys know how it is.
Yes, awesome. We do.
Yeah, no, we do.
Very much.
We do. So this is the age-old question I ask and everybody.
It's a good one.
So if now that you're, a published author and that you're, established, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
So for writers that are looking to break in whether it be in fiction or nonfiction, obviously you have a lot of experience to draw on now, being the established author that you are. Congratulations.
Woo-hoo.
Thank you.
So what pearls of wisdom can you pass on to the next generation?
I would probably say, and again, this is probably what a lot of people say, is persistence. The one thing that's really great about the publishing industry compared to the screenwriting industry is that for publishing, the vast majority of agents can be queried online through their agency websites.
Yep.
And so you really can't do that with scripts. So, if you Google and research and, the type of book that you have, you can try to find which agents are looking for that material. Because a lot of it is, finding the person that's looking for what you have to offer, and targeting your queries to them. Whereas, the only way you could really reach a literary agent for scripts is through referrals or a contest win or something. And you don't necessarily need that. Lots of agents in the publishing world are looking for certain material. And so they're open to, experts from other fields or first timers. And so, that are really looking at the material. Another thing in screenwriting, I often feel like they're looking more for concept. They're shopping for the artist as much as they are for the material.
Yep.
Whereas in the publishing world, they're shopping for the material.
Right.
So it's just, finding the right person, and it's a numbers game. You have to reach out and, because some of the people that may be looking for what you have, they're too busy with other projects at the moment, so they're not looking. And so you have to keep trying. And growing your social media helps, which I'm awful at, but that makes a huge difference these days.
Yeah, especially in nonfiction.
Yeah, that gets everything. They're looking for the numbers. They're looking for the eyeballs. They're looking for how many people you're bringing to the table. And then one of the best bits of advice I have for querying agents for nonfiction books, and this I think I did like an online, like a free workshop or something, but this nugget of information I felt like was the key to getting a query, getting traction with a query. And it's this. So if for querying agents for nonfiction book proposals, the best advice is this: the agent has a problem and you have a solution. And that's the key. Querying a nonfiction book.
That's
Samuel,
a great
I just got
way to
chills.
reframe it. Yeah,
that's a really good way to frame that.
And so and it's super, like it's so clear. It's like, okay, that's like, that should be your goal for a query.
Awesome.
And if you tackle the query from that angle, I think it'll be stronger. And
that's great.
And then and especially if it's something prescriptive, like how to. But even if not, you're basically, trying to sell them on something. And I think that's a great way to look at it. And then, the advice would just be always strive to improve your craft. Never, I feel like, writing is never, you never reach a point where it's like, okay, I know everything, or I know how to do. Always
evolving,
different classes, trying different things, looking at different ways of, doing stuff and exploring things. And, you never stop learning, whatever it is, whether it's about the craft of writing or just other things,
That is
awesome.
That's a really good tip. Holy cow.
That's honestly probably, I mean, I've asked that question a bunch, to authors. That's probably the best answer we've gotten, I think.
Oh, nice. Samuel, are you doing great?
Awesome.
As you can see, we've hit all our big questions, but the cincher, as a journalist, you probably know, is there anything we didn't ask that you did want to mention?
I feel like we did talk about everything. Even we talked about research. We talked about the titles.
You did touch on what's next for you in the publishing realm. You kind of hinted at it. We didn't get to that question yet. Is that story frame book on your radar? I think, I started making notes in a proposal. I haven't really tackled a lot of it, but, I toying with it. But so depending on whatever. I know what else I've been working on. I'm also working on a board game pitch for a trivia game based on How to Win the War on Truth. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I feel like it lends itself really well. Like there's a trivia game, Stuff You Should Know, based on a podcast like that. And so I kind of feel like it could totally be a trivia game like that.
Yeah.
So I've already been working on the questions, working on the proposal and pitch deck. So I really feel like, this could make a great trivia game because there's so much information. Bring up falsehoods and misinformation. So the game, the other book proposal, scripts.
Yeah.
So you're pretty well set. You're you're busy, a little busy.
You've got a lot of spinning plates.
Well, speaking of that, then, how can our listeners find you on social media and or buy your book?
Oh, good question. The book is available at pretty much all major retailers. It's online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, even Target and Walmart. You could patronize your local independent booksellers, which is always great.
Please do that.
And you can find me online. Let's see, my Twitter handle is, actually, what is my Twitter handle? Twitter.com/Samuel C. Spitale. And I believe my Facebook author account is the same. Facebook.com/Samuel C. Spitale.
Awesome. I mean, I think we kind of knocked it out of the park, Sam.
I'm going to go to bed. This is amazing.
It's over. We're done.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you
for
so
doing
much
this.
for joining us.
Of course. So sorry it was late.
No, that's totally fine.
It wasn't. It was normal time for us. So
do you do you have a lot more of this type of stuff lined up for the book, or?
I have another podcast interview, but it's not for it's several weeks from now. And
Cool.
So yeah, I'm trying to think. I think that's all that's going on this week.
Okay.
And so there have been a few things. I spoke this past weekend at the Wisconsin Book Festival.
Cool.
I did a panel, and yeah, there have been a few things. So
that's great.
Yeah, we'll
Great.
see. Now that the book is due out October 25th, hopefully there'll be a few more things.
Yeah.
Are you going to have like a book launch party with your family or friends or anything?
I've been thinking about that. I don't have anything lined up. I keep thinking of trying to do something, but not yet. So
just drive to the Grove and just walk around the Grove and just start shouting about your book.
Oh, the Grove.
The Grove. Samuel, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And that concludes episode 7 of season 2.
Woo!
Peter,
Doggy, we did it. Lucky number 7. Cruising and bruising. No, wait.
Did you say right. Lucky number 11? That's such a good movie.
Never seen it.
You should watch that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I like the title. It's a catchy title.
It's a good title. Lucky number 11.
So, gang, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stay tuned for episode 8 because we've got author Jessica Hatch coming on the program, and I am very excited to talk to her.
Not only is author Jessica Hatch going to be here, but my BFF in real life here in Jacksonville, Florida is going to be here because I know her in real life and she's one of my really good friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize she was actually in Florida. That's cool.
All the email exchanges is like my BFF IRL.
Oh,
I don't know if they actually said that. I think I just heard it in my head and never typed it out. Hatch, We're looking at you, kid. Can't wait to have you on.
And if you have any questions, rants, or raves about writing, or you just want to learn more about us or Pipeline, please visit pipelineartists.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at The Podcast Title, on Instagram and Facebook at This Podcast Needs a Title. And you can follow me at The Davis Girl. And you can even follow that fancy Peter Malone Elliott. He's smiling like a banshee. At PME Writer. And if you say it 3 times, he appears in your freezer. It's Halloween.
I'm going to be in your freezer.
This is Halloween. He's looking at me creepy. Bye.
I'm going to be eating the popsicles in your freezer. Eating the ice cream in your freezer.
Putting any of that.
Your freezer. Your freezer.
Lunchtime?
Yes.
Are we recording? La, 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 la.